Harrison Caldwell looked at his wife, Genevieve, and saw nothing but beige wallpaper, plain, silent, and easily replaced. He thought he was the main character of a high-stakes drama, finally trading in his boring life for the glamour of his mistress, Bianca. He signed the divorce papers with a flourish, believing he was cutting off dead weight. He didn't know that the dead weight was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. When the black diplomatic convoys arrived, they didn't come for the ambitious architect. They knelt before the woman he had just thrown away. He wanted a trophy wife, but he discarded a queen. The problem with Genevieve Arrington, in Harrison Caldwell's estimation, wasn't that she was bad. It was that she was invisible. They had been married for 6 years, living in a meticulously renovated townhouse in the upscale Kensington district of London. Harrison was a junior partner at Sterling and Finch, a boutique architectural firm catering to the sort of clients who bought islands just to have a place to park their yachts. He was 34, handsome in a sharp, angular way, and possessed the kind of ambition that burned like acid in the pit of his stomach. Genevieve? Genevieve was a librarian. She worked in the archives of a university, dealing with dust and crumbling paper. When she came home, she smelled of old vanilla and binding glue. She wore her ash-brown hair in a severe low bun that pulled her features tight. She wore cardigans that seemed designed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She was quiet. She was efficient. She was the human equivalent of room-temperature water. "Harry, did you remember to pay the landscaper?" Harrison looked up from his drafting table in the Home Office. He was sketching a cantilevered deck for a tech mogul's retreat in the Alps. He didn't look at her. "I thought you handled the household accounts, Eve." "I do," she said softly, standing in the doorway. She was holding a mug of tea with both hands. "But the landscaper prefers cash, and you withdrew the limit yesterday." Harrison sighed, the sound loud in the quiet room. "I had a lunch, a business lunch. I'll go to the ATM tomorrow. Is that all?" "Dinner is in 10 minutes, roast chicken." "Fine." As she walked away, Harrison felt that familiar itch of irritation. Roast chicken. It was always roast chicken, or stew, or something sensible. Their life was a series of sensible choices. He looked at the blueprint in front of him. Bold lines, dangerous curves, expensive materials. That was who he was supposed to be. He was meant for glass and steel, not wool and ceramic. He checked his phone. A message from Bianca popped up on the screen, accompanied by a photo that was anything but sensible. "Bianca, the reservation is at 8 o'clock. Wear the navy suit. I want to show you off." An involuntary smile touched his lips. Bianca St. Clair was the new PR director at his firm. She was 26, laughed loud enough to turn heads in a restaurant, and smelled like expensive jasmine and ambition. She was the daughter of a minor diplomat, connected, vibrant, and everything Genevieve wasn't. When he was with Bianca, Harrison felt like the man he was pretending to be. When he was with Genevieve, he felt like a fraud who was just lucky to pay the mortgage. He went downstairs to the kitchen. Genevieve was slicing the chicken. The kitchen was spotless, organized with a military precision that Harrison usually ignored. "I can't stay for dinner," Harrison said, adjusting his cufflinks. Genevieve paused, the knife hovering over the bird. She didn't turn around. "Oh?" "Client emergency. The Alpine project. I have to meet the lead engineer." It was a lie, so thin it was almost insulting. Engineers didn't meet at 8 p.m. on a Friday in a suit. "Harrison," Genevieve said. Her voice was steady, lacking the shrill accusation he was bracing himself for. She turned to face him. Her eyes were a strange shade of grey, sometimes blue, sometimes slate. Tonight they looked tired. "This is the 3rd time this week. It's a big project, Eve. It could make partner for me." "Is that what it is?" she asked. "A project?" He hated how she looked at him. Not with anger, but with a dissecting gaze, as if she were reading a text in a language he didn't speak. It made him feel small, and Harrison Caldwell hated feeling small. "Don't start," he snapped, grabbing his keys off the granite island. "I'm working my ass off for this life, for this house. Someone has to have ambition in this family." He expected her to argue, to point out that her small salary covered the utilities and the groceries, allowing his erratic commissions to go toward the mortgage and his leased Audi. But she didn't. She just set the knife down. "Go then," she whispered. "Don't let me keep you from your ambition." He walked out the door without looking back. He didn't see her walk to the window and watch him leave. He didn't see her pull a sleek burner phone from a hidden compartment in the pantry, a phone that cost more than his car. He didn't hear her speak into it in flawless, rapid-fire French. "Le temps est écoulé. Préparez le dossier. Time is up. Prepare the file." The affair lasted 6 months before Harrison decided he was done pretending. It was a Tuesday in November. London was drowning in rain. Harrison had spent the afternoon in a hotel room with Bianca, who had spent the last hour convincing him that he was wasting his potential. "She holds you back, Harry," Bianca had purred, tracing the line of his jaw. "Look at you. You're a visionary. She's a librarian. She's nice, I'm sure, but she's furniture. You need a partner. Someone who can stand next to you at the galas. Someone who knows the names of the people who actually matter." Bianca was right. That was the narrative Harrison had constructed. He was the rising star, weighed down by a high school sweetheart marriage that had lost its spark. He went home determined to end it. When he entered the house, it was quiet. The heating was on, keeping the damp London chill at bay. He found Genevieve in the living room. She was sitting in the armchair by the fireplace, reading a leather-bound book that looked older than the house itself. She wasn't wearing her usual cardigan. She was wearing a silk blouse he hadn't seen before, and her hair was down, cascading over her shoulders in soft waves. For a second, he hesitated. She looked different. Sharper. "We need to talk," Harrison said, loosening his tie. He poured himself a scotch from the crystal decanter to steady his nerves. "Yes," Genevieve said, closing the book. The sound was a soft thud. "I suppose we do. Benedict Halloway called the house today." Harrison froze, the glass halfway to his mouth. Benedict Halloway was the senior partner at Sterling and Finch, the big boss, the man Harrison had spoken to perhaps 3 times in 5 years. "Why would Halloway call here?" Harrison asked, his heart hammering. "Did something happen at the firm?" "He wasn't calling for you, Harrison. He was calling for me." Harrison blinked. A laugh bubbled up in his throat, nervous and incredulous. "You? Why would the head of one of London's top architecture firms call a university archivist?" Genevieve stood up. She wasn't tall, but in that moment she seemed to loom over the coffee table. "Because I sit on the board of the charitable trust that owns the land your firm's office is built on. We were discussing the lease renewal." Harrison stared at her. His brain tried to process the information and failed. "What are you talking about? The trust? You catalogue history books, Eve." "I do many things you don't ask about," she said calmly. "But that's not why you came home with that look on your face. You came to leave me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Harrison set the glass down hard. The liquid sloshed over the rim. He felt exposed, and he lashed out. Yes, I did. I can't do this anymore, Eve. We're different people. I'm moving forward, and you're content to just exist. And Bianca St. Clair is the future?" Harrison went cold. "How do you—" "Please, Harrison, you share a phone plan with me. You use your credit card for dinners in Mayfair. You aren't exactly a spy." She walked over to the window, looking out at the rain-slicked street. "You want a divorce?" "I want a life that matches who I am," he declared, regaining his footing. "I want excitement. I want status. I'm tired of coming home to this, to mediocrity." The word hung in the air. mediocrity. Genevieve turned slowly. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were like ice. Mediocrity, she repeated. Is that what you think this is? I gave you peace, Harrison. I gave you stability. I built a sanctuary so you could go out and play architect. I built this career, he shouted. I pay for this house. You pay the mortgage interest, she corrected. I paid the down payment. I paid the renovations. Who do you think cleared your student loans 3 years ago? A bank error? Harrison's face flushed red. My parents. Your parents are pensioners in Leeds, Harrison. They didn't send you £40,000 anonymously. He stepped back, feeling the ground shift. He had always assumed, well, he hadn't thought about it. The money just appeared. He assumed he was just good at managing finances, or that bonuses had been bigger than he remembered. I don't care about the money, Harrison lied. I care about love, passion. I don't love you anymore, Eve. I'm bored. Naira. Genevieve looked at him for a long, agonizing minute. Then she nodded. Boredom, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream. It is a luxury of the safe. Very well. You want the divorce. You can have it. You can have the house, the mortgage, the debts, and the life you think you built. I'm not trying to screw you over, Harrison said, suddenly feeling generous now that he had won. You can take the savings. Keep them, she said. She walked past him towards the hallway. You'll need them for the legal fees when the firm realizes who they actually work for. Stop talking in riddles, Harrison snapped. Where are you going? I'm leaving, she said, pulling a suitcase from the closet by the door. It was already packed. Harrison frowned. You knew I was going to do this today? I knew you were a coward, Harrison. I just didn't know when you'd finally admit it. She opened the front door. The wind howled, blowing rain into the hallway. She turned back one last time. She didn't look sad. She looked relieved, like a statue that had finally cracked to reveal something gold underneath. You wanted a different world, Harrison, she said. Now you have to live in it. Don't look for me. She stepped out into the rain. Harrison rushed to the door, expecting to see her walking towards the bus stop. Instead, he saw a vehicle idling at the curb. It wasn't a taxi. It was a black Bentley Mulsanne with diplomatic plates. A man in a dark suit was holding an umbrella for her, opening the rear door with a bow that was too deep, too formal for a librarian. Genevieve slid inside without looking back. The car pulled away, disappearing into the London fog. Harrison stood in the doorway, wet and confused. He felt a strange vibration in his pocket. He pulled out his phone, a notification from his banking app. Alert, joint account closed. Balance, transfer, £0. He stared at the screen. Then he looked at the empty street. Good riddance, he muttered, though his voice shook. He dialed Bianca. It's done, he told her. She's gone. Oh, Harry, that's wonderful, Bianca squealed. Come over. We have to celebrate. The world is our oyster now. Harrison smiled, pushing down the unease. Yes, the world was his. He had no idea that the oyster he had just cracked open was empty, and the pearl had just driven away in a Bentley. The first week of Harrison's freedom tasted like champagne, sweet, bubbly, and intoxicating. But by the second week, it began to taste like flat soda and fear. Harrison had moved Bianca into the Kensington townhouse almost immediately. He told himself it was practical. Why pay for her apartment when he had a 4-bedroom home? But deep down, he did it to fill the silence. The house, usually a well-oiled machine of comfort, had developed hiccups. Harry, the heating is off again, Bianca complained one morning, wrapping her silk robe tighter around herself. She was standing in the kitchen, looking at the complex smart home panel on the wall, and the coffee machine is displaying an error code I don't understand. Service lock? Harrison groaned, rubbing his temples. He was nursing a hangover from a celebratory dinner that had cost 3 times what he expected. Just restart it, B. I did. It says subscription expired. Who subscribes to a coffee machine? Harrison walked over, squinting at the digital readout. Genevieve. Genevieve had insisted on the Italian espresso system that ordered its own beans and scheduled its own maintenance. He hadn't realized it was leased under a contract he didn't have access to. I'll buy a new one, he muttered, opening the fridge. It was empty, save for a bottle of vodka and a carton of takeout leftovers. And the cleaner didn't come yesterday, Bianca added, leaning against the counter, scrolling through her phone. The place is getting dusty. I'm not cleaning toilets, Harry. That's not what I signed up for. I'll call the agency, Harrison snapped, his patience fraying. He went to his study to find the number for the housekeeping service. He found the folder labeled House, but inside, the contracts were all in Genevieve's name. When he called the agency, the woman on the line was polite but firm. I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell terminated the contract effective immediately last Tuesday. She paid the severance for the staff, but we cannot reinstate service without a new credit check and a 6-month retainer. Your credit rating, unfortunately, has been flagged. Flagged? By who? By the bank, sir. There seem to be substantial irregularities with your mortgage payments. Harrison slammed the phone down. He logged into his banking app. The numbers were a sea of red. He had always assumed his salary of £85,000 was supporting their lifestyle. He stared at the transaction history, really looking at it for the first time. Mortgage, £4, 200. Month, Audi lease, £800/month. Utilities, £600/month. Club membership, £400/month. His take-home pay was barely £4,500 a month after taxes. The math didn't work. It had never worked. For 6 years, Genevieve had been quietly bridging a deficit of nearly £3,000 a month. She hadn't just been buying groceries, she had been subsidizing his entire existence. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He wasn't rich. He was a pauper living in a rich man's costume. He decided to go to work early, hoping to distract himself with the Alpine project. If he landed this, the partnership bonus would fix everything. He needed that bonus. When he arrived at Sterling and Finch, the atmosphere was frosty. Usually the receptionist, a bubbly woman named Chloe, would wave. Today she pretended to type as he walked by. Harrison marched to his office, only to find his keycard didn't work. The little light on the handle blinked an angry red. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. Problem with the lock? Harrison asked loudly, trying to project confidence. Mr. Caldwell? He turned to see Benedict Halloway standing in the hallway. The senior partner was a tall man with silver hair and a gaze that could peel paint. He wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a man Harrison didn't recognize, a severe-looking man in a grey suit holding a clipboard. Benedict? Good morning, Harrison said, flashing his best smile. My keycard seems to be demagnetized. It's not demagnetized, Harrison, Halloway said. His voice was devoid of warmth. We need a word in the conference room. Now. Harrison followed them, his stomach churning. Had Bianca told them about their relationship? Technically, office romances were frowned upon, but not fireable offences. They sat at the long glass table. Halloway didn't offer him water. This is Mr. Thornton, Halloway said, gesturing to the grey suit. He represents the Valdonian Heritage Trust. Harrison frowned. The landowners? Is this about the lease renewal? I told Jean, my wife, about it. Ex-wife, I hear, Halloway corrected sharply. And yes, it is about the lease. Specifically, the clause that stipulates the building is leased to Sterling and Finch at a significantly reduced rate. Peanuts, really, on the condition of familial patronage. I don't understand, Harrison said. Mr. Thornton pushed a document across the table. The building your firm occupies is owned by the Crown Estate of the Grand Duchy of Valdonia. The lease was granted as a personal favor to Her Highness, purely to support her husband's career. Since that relationship has been dissolved, the favor is rescinded. Harrison stared at him. Her Highness? The rent is going up, Harrison, Holloway said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage, by 400%, starting retroactively from the 1st of the month. We can't afford that. We have to move. Do you have any idea what it costs to relocate an architectural firm in central London? Wait, Harrison stammered. Genevieve? You're talking about Genevieve? She's a librarian. Thornton looked at Harrison with an expression of profound pity. She is a scholar, yes. She is also Lady Genevieve of the House of Valois-Dumont, second in line to the throne of Valdonia. Did you honestly never wonder why she spoke 4 languages and knew how to navigate a diplomatic reception? Harrison sat back, the air punched out of his lungs. He thought about the landscaper who stood by the gate. He thought about the black car. He thought about the way she held her teacup, her posture, her silence. It wasn't submissiveness. It was discipline. She never told me, Harrison whispered. She wanted a life where she was valued for herself, not her crown, Thornton said, standing up. It appears she did not find it. Holloway leaned forward. You've cost this firm its home, Harrison. You've cost us our prestige client. And frankly, your work on the Alpine project has been slipping for months. Miss St. Clair has been distracting you. I can fix this, Harrison pleaded. Let me talk to her. You are legally barred from contacting her, Thornton interjected smoothly. The Royal Guard has deemed you a security risk due to your volatile emotional state and financial instability. Pack your things, Harrison, Holloway said, standing up to leave. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes and take Miss St. Clair with you. She was hired on your recommendation, and frankly, her performance is as hollow as your promises. Harrison walked out of the conference room in a daze. He had walked in that morning as a rising star. He was leaving as an unemployed, divorced man with 0 assets, who had just found out he had been married to a princess and was too stupid to notice. He went to his desk. Bianca was already there, holding a cardboard box, mascara running down her cheeks. "They fired me!" she shrieked, causing the entire open-plan office to look up. "Harrison, do something! They said I was excess baggage." Harrison looked at her. Really looked at her. Her makeup was smeared, her face contorted in selfish panic. She didn't ask if he was okay. She didn't care about the firm. She just cared about her job. He remembered Genevieve's calm face in the rain. "I built a sanctuary so you could go out and play architect. Let's go, Bianca," Harrison said quietly. "Where?" she demanded. "The Audi?" "The Audi is gone," Harrison said, remembering the lease alert on his phone earlier that he had ignored. "The repo men took it from the parking garage an hour ago." "So we're taking the tube?" Bianca gasped, horrified. "Yes," Harrison said, grabbing his box of personal effects. "We're taking the tube." 3 weeks of unemployment felt like 3 years. Harrison and Bianca were still living in the Kensington townhouse, but only because the eviction process took time. The house was freezing. The electricity had been cut to a basic service level, meaning they had lights but no internet and no hot water. Bianca had turned nasty. The fun, vibrant mistress had been replaced by a harpy who spent her days scrolling through Instagram on her data plan, screaming about how Harrison had ruined her life. Harrison spent his days drinking cheap whiskey and staring at the wall. He had applied to every firm in London. No one would touch him. Word had got out. He was the man who cheated on a princess. He was radioactive. Then the envelope arrived. It was thick, cream-coloured cardstock with gold leaf edging. It had been pushed through the mail slot, landing on the dusty doormat with a heavy thud. Harrison picked it up. His hands shook. It was addressed to Mr. Harrison Caldwell and guest. He ripped it open. "The Royal Foundation of Valdonia requests the pleasure of your company at the Winter Solstice Gala, to be held at the Victoria and Albert Museum. black tie, honouring the work of Archduchess Genevieve. Harrison stared at the card. A laugh bubbled up in his throat, a manic, desperate sound. She was mocking him. She had to be. Or maybe she missed him. The thought took root in his desperate mind like a weed. Maybe this was a test. Maybe she wanted to see him one last time. Maybe if he showed up, looked dashing, and showed her he was still the man she fell in love with, she would take him back. He could explain everything. He could say he was seduced, confused. He could beg. "Bianca!" he shouted. Bianca shuffled into the hallway, wearing sweatpants. "What?" "We're going out," Harrison said, waving the invitation. "To the V&A, a royal gala." Bianca snatched the card. Her eyes went wide. Is this her?" "It's a chance," Harrison said, a fire lighting in his eyes. "It's a room full of the richest people in Europe. Even if she doesn't take me back, I can network. I can rebuild. But we need to look the part." "I have nothing to wear," Bianca wailed. "All my good dresses are from last season." Harrison made a decision that would seal his fate. He went to the wall safe in the master bedroom. It was empty of cash, but sitting in the back was a velvet box. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet, an heirloom from his grandmother that he was supposed to give to his daughter, if he ever had one. It was the last thing of value he owned. "We pawned this," Harrison said, holding up the diamonds. "We rent a tuxedo. You get the best dress on Bond Street. We are going to walk into that museum like we own it." The night of the gala, the Victoria and Albert Museum was transformed into a fortress of light and luxury. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the massive arched entrance, flanked by paparazzi and security guards in ceremonial uniforms. Harrison stepped out of the hired town car, which had cost the last of the pawn money. He looked good. The tuxedo fit perfectly. He had shaved, slicked back his hair, and put on the mask of the successful architect. Bianca was on his arm. She was wearing a dress of crimson sequins that was cut too low and slit too high. It was a look-at-me dress, screaming for attention. In a nightclub, she would have been a queen. Here, amidst the old money and understated elegance of the aristocracy, she looked like a neon sign in a library. Harrison felt the stares immediately. He interpreted them as admiration. "Head up," he whispered to Bianca. "Smile." They walked up the red carpet. The photographers lowered their cameras. A few whispered. No flashes went off. It was the ultimate insult. Indifference. They entered the grand hall. It was breathtaking. Chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling. A string orchestra played Debussy. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Harrison scanned the room, looking for Halloway, for former clients, for anyone who could give him a job. He saw Halloway near the bar, talking to a duke. Harrison started to move toward him, but Halloway made eye contact, turned his back, and walked away. "They're all jealous," Bianca hissed, clutching her champagne flute too tightly. "Look at them. Stiff old mummies." Suddenly the music stopped. A hush fell over the room. The lights dimmed and a spotlight hit the top of the grand marble staircase. A man in a sash and medals stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed, "please welcome the patron of the evening, Her Royal Highness, Princess Genevieve of Valdonia." Harrison's breath hitched. Genevieve appeared at the top of the stairs. Harrison had expected the woman he knew, the beige cardigans, the messy bun, the quiet demeanor. The woman on the stairs was a stranger. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet that seemed to absorb the light, shimmering with thousands of tiny crystals like a night sky. On her head sat a tiara, diamonds and sapphires, heavy and ancient. Her hair was swept up in an intricate style that exposed the elegant curve of her neck. She didn't walk. She glided. Her face was composed, regal, and terrifyingly beautiful. She wasn't just pretty. She was important. Beside her walked a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a jawline that could cut glass. He wore a military dress uniform with a sash that matched hers. He offered her his arm, and she took it with a grace that spoke of a lifetime of practice. "Who is that?" Bianca whispered, her voice laced with jealousy and awe. A woman standing next to them turned. She was an elderly countess, dripping in pearls. She looked at Bianca with distaste, then answered, "That is Prince Stefan of Valdonia, her cousin and the commander of the Royal Guard, and the man she should have married if she hadn't run off to England for her commoner experiment." Harrison felt like he had been punched in the gut. Experiment. Was that all he was? A rebellious phase? Genevieve reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She moved through the room, shaking hands, exchanging polite words in French, German, and English. She was radiant. She was the sun, and everyone else was just orbiting debris. Harrison couldn't help himself. He had to make her see him. He had to remind her that he was the man she had chosen. "Genevieve," he called out, stepping forward, breaking the unspoken perimeter the crowd had given her. The room went deadly silent. Genevieve stopped. She turned slowly. Her eyes locked onto Harrison. For a moment, Harrison thought he saw a flicker of the wife who used to make him roast chicken. But then the shutter came down. Her eyes were cold, hard gemstones. She looked at him. She looked at the rented tuxedo. She looked at Bianca in her crimson dress, who was shrinking back in embarrassment. Genevieve didn't speak to him. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply turned to Prince Stefan and said, loud enough for the circle around them to hear, "Stefan, I believe there is an intruder. I thought the guest list was restricted to those with substance." Stefan nodded, his face grim. He snapped his fingers. 2 large security guards materialized out of the crowd. They didn't grab Harrison. They just stood in his path, a wall of muscle. "Sir," one of them said, "you'll need to leave." "I was invited," Harrison shouted, his dignity crumbling. He pulled the invitation from his pocket. "Look, Harrison Caldwell and guest." Genevieve paused. She looked back over her shoulder. A small, cruel smile played on her lips. "Oh yes," she said softly. "I did send that. I wanted you to see what you threw away. I wanted you to see that while you were busy chasing a flashlight, you lost the moon." She turned back to the crowd. "Please, enjoy the evening. The distraction has been removed." The orchestra started playing again. The crowd turned their backs on Harrison, closing the circle around the princess. Harrison stood there, the invitation crumpled in his fist. Bianca was already walking toward the exit, not waiting for him. "Sir," the guard repeated, putting a hand on Harrison's shoulder, "don't make a scene." Harrison allowed himself to be led out. As he walked through the heavy wooden doors, back into the cold London rain, he realized the truth. He hadn't just lost a wife. He hadn't just lost a house. He had become a footnote in someone else's biography. A cautionary tale. And the worst part was, the story wasn't over. As he stood on the curb, watching the rain soak his rented shoes, a black van pulled up. The side door slid open. "Mr. Caldwell?" a voice from the dark interior asked. "Yes?" Harrison said, shivering. "We're from the press," the voice said. "Specifically, the Daily Scandal. We heard you have a story to tell, and we pay for exclusive rights." Harrison looked at the van. He had no money. He had no home. He had no pride left. "How much?" Harrison asked. He stepped into the van. He thought he could control the narrative. He thought he could smear her. He didn't know that by selling his story, he was lighting the fuse on the final explosion that would destroy what little he had left. The interview with the Daily Scandal took place in a windowless room that smelled of stale tobacco and desperation. The journalist, a man named Nigel Thorne, with yellowing teeth and a suit that looked like it had been slept in, recorded everything on 3 separate devices. "So," Nigel said, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming with predatory delight, "you're telling me that this princess lied to you for 6 years, trapped you in a fraudulent marriage?" Harrison, fueled by resentment, and the advance cheque of £15,000 sitting in his pocket, nodded vigorously. She played the victim, Nigel. She pretended to be this mousy, helpless librarian. She let me pay the bills, well, most of them, and acted like she had nothing. Meanwhile, she was sitting on a fortune. It's financial abuse, isn't it? Deception. And the affair, Nigel pressed, tapping his pen, with Miss St. Clair. I was lonely, Harrison said, adopting a tragic tone he had practiced in the mirror of the hostel bathroom he was now staying in. I was living with a ghost, a woman who wouldn't tell me who she was. Bianca. She was real. She was honest. Genevieve drove me to it. The headline the next morning was a masterclass in yellow journalism, The Poor Architect and the Predator, Princess, how Genevieve of Valdonia conned her way into a normal life. For 24 hours, Harrison felt a surge of vindication. The internet forums were ablaze. Men's rights activists rallied around him. He was the everyman tricked by the elite. He sat in a pub in East London, buying rounds for strangers with his tabloid money, feeling like a king. But the high was short-lived. The first crack in his new reality appeared 2 days later. He woke up in his dingy hotel room to find his phone blowing up, not with support, but with vitriol. He opened Twitter. The narrative had shifted. Someone had leaked the court documents regarding the mortgage, specifically the documents showing Genevieve's payments. At Royal Watcher, just saw the leaks. This poor architect only paid 20% of his own mortgage. The princess paid off his student loans and his credit card debt. He's not a victim. He's a leech. Harrison scrolled frantically. The tide was turning. People weren't stupid. They saw the math. Then came the second blow. Bianca St. Clair. She had been quiet since the gala, refusing to answer his calls. He assumed she was embarrassed. He didn't know she was negotiating. Harrison turned on the TV in the hotel lobby. There she was, sitting on the sofa of Good Morning Britain, looking tearful and repentant. She was wearing a modest, high-necked sweater, no makeup. "I didn't know," Bianca sobbed to the host. "Harrison told me she was abusive. He told me she was cold. He used his position at the firm to manipulate me. I was a junior employee. He was a partner. I felt pressured." Harrison screamed at the TV. "Liar! You chased me!" "I am so sorry to Her Highness," Bianca continued, wiping a tear. "I was used by a narcissist who couldn't handle a strong woman, so he tried to destroy 2 of them." The host nodded sympathetically. "Brave of you to speak out, Bianca." Harrison stood frozen. He had been outplayed. Bianca had saved her own skin by throwing him to the wolves. She had successfully rebranded herself from the other woman to the victim of power dynamics. He rushed out of the hotel, intending to go to the Daily Scandal offices to demand a retraction or a follow-up piece. He never made it. As he stepped onto the pavement, a sleek black sedan pulled up. It wasn't the police. It wasn't the press. 2 men in grey suits stepped out. They looked like accountants, but they moved like assassins. One of them handed Harrison a thick envelope. "Mr. Caldwell?" the man asked. "Yes?" "You have been served. Her Royal Highness versus Harrison Caldwell." Harrison laughed nervously. "A divorce settlement? I already signed the papers." "Not divorce, Mr. Caldwell," the man said, his voice dry as dust. "Defamation, breach of contract, violation of the Official Secrets Act, and fraud." "Fraud?" Harrison stammered. "I never stole anything." "You accepted a salary from Sterling and Finch," the man explained, "a firm subsidized by the Valdonian Crown. Your contract contained a morality clause. By engaging in an affair on company time and using company funds for leisure, you defrauded the Crown. We are freezing your assets, pending the investigation, including the payment from the tabloid." Harrison watched the car drive away. He looked at the envelope. It was heavy. He checked his banking app. Account frozen. Balance £45,000, overdraft and legal holds. He was standing in the middle of London with £12 in his pocket and a lawsuit that could bankrupt a small country hanging over his head. The trial was not televised, but the transcripts were the most downloaded documents in British legal history. Harrison couldn't afford a lawyer. The court appointed a weary public defender named Mr. Pumblechook, who looked at Harrison with undisguised disdain. Across the aisle sat the Crown's legal team, 3 men in bespoke suits who looked like sharks that had learned to walk. The charge was simple. Harrison had violated a non-disclosure agreement he didn't even know he had signed. It was in the prenuptial agreement, the lead prosecutor, Sir Alistair Sterling, argued smoothly. "I never signed a prenup," Harrison shouted from the defendant's box. "Exhibit A," Sir Alistair said, projecting a document onto the screen. "Signed by Harrison Caldwell, 6 years ago. Buried in the mortgage insurance paperwork you admitted to skimming before signing." There it was, his signature. He remembered that day. He had been so eager to get the keys to the Kensington house, he had signed 20 pages of documents without reading a single paragraph. "Clause 14, Section B," Sir Alistair read. "The signatory agrees to maintain absolute confidentiality regarding the lineage, financial holdings, and private associations of the spouse. Any breach resulting in reputational damage will incur a penalty of £5 million and immediate forfeiture of all marital assets." Harrison slumped in his chair. He was done. But the true humiliation came when Genevieve took the stand. She didn't look at him. She wore a simple grey suit, her hair pulled back. She looked like the librarian again, but with a spine of steel. "Your Highness," Sir Alistair asked gently, "why did you hide your identity from the defendant? Mr. Caldwell claims it was entrapment." Genevieve adjusted the microphone. Her voice was clear, ringing through the silent courtroom. "I did not hide to trap him," she said. "I hid to protect him." A ripple of confusion went through the gallery. "Explain," the judge prompted. "Valdonia is a small but politically significant principality," Genevieve said. "My family has enemies. Anarchist cells, political rivals, kidnapping rings. By keeping my identity secret, I ensured Harrison was never a target. If the world knew he was the husband of the Duchess, he would have needed 24-hour security. He would have lived in a cage. I wanted him to be free. I wanted him to have a life where he could be just Harry." She paused, and for the first time she looked at him. The look wasn't angry. It was pitiful. "I gave up my guards, my luxury, and my name to give him a normal life," she continued. "I ate roast chicken and watched bad television and pretended to worry about the electric bill so he could feel like the provider. I made myself small so he could feel big." "And how did he repay this sacrifice?" Sir Alistair asked. "He told me I was boring," Genevieve said simply. "He cheated on me with my employee, and then he sold my safety to a tabloid for £15,000. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Harrison felt the eyes of everyone, the jury, the judge, the gallery, boring into him. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't even a villain. He was a fool, a man who had been handed a diamond and complained that it scratched the glass. "No further questions," Sir Alistair said. The verdict was swift. Harrison was found liable for damages. The sum was staggering. £2.5 million in restitution to the Crown for security breaches, plus legal fees. "Mr. Caldwell," the judge said, peering over his spectacles, "since you lack the funds to pay, the Crown has graciously offered a settlement." "Anything," Harrison whispered. "You will be permanently enjoined from speaking about Her Highness or the royal family. You will surrender all rights to the Kensington property, and you will perform 5,000 hours of community service." Harrison nodded. It was over. As the bailiffs led him away, he looked back. Genevieve was gathering her papers. She didn't look up. A man in a military uniform, Prince Stefan, placed a hand on the small of her back and guided her out of a side door. Harrison realized then that the plain wife he had loathed was the only person who had ever truly loved him enough to erase herself for his benefit. And he had erased himself from her life for a woman who was currently giving an exclusive interview to Vogue about surviving toxic men. 5 years later, the rain in Slough didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Harrison Caldwell wiped the laminate counter of Pete's Pastries with a rag that smelled of sour milk and despair. He was 39 years old, but the reflection in the stainless steel coffee machine showed a man pushing 50. His hair, once thick and styled with expensive product, was thinning and grey at the temples. His hands, which used to draft million-pound extensions for Kensington townhouses, were now red, chapped, and smelling permanently of yeast and floor cleaner. He wasn't an architect anymore. He wasn't even a draftsman. After the trial, the professional stigma had been absolute. No firm in the UK would hire the man who had sued a crown princess for entrapment and lost in spectacular public fashion. He was radioactive. His bankruptcy had taken the Audi, the clothes, the watches, and the arrogance. Now he lived in a bedsit above a laundromat that vibrated every time the spin cycle hit high gear. "Oi, mate, are you deaf?" Harrison blinked, snapping out of his daze. A customer, a teenager in a tracksuit, was tapping a credit card aggressively on the reader. "Sorry," Harrison mumbled, his voice rough. "The machine is slow today." "Yeah, well, so are you," the kid sneered, grabbing his bag of sausage rolls. He didn't say thank you. He just walked out, leaving a gust of cold, wet wind to rattle the bell above the door. Harrison stared at the closed door. Invisible. That was what Genevieve had been to him. A fixture, a service provider. He had treated her with the same casual disdain this teenager had just shown him. The universe, it seemed, had a very specific sense of irony. He turned to the small television mounted in the corner of the shop. Usually it played muted music videos, but today every channel was broadcasting the same feed. "Breaking news," the banner screamed in royal blue and gold. "Coronation Day in Valdonia." Harrison felt a physical blow to his chest, as if his heart had been kicked by a horse. He couldn't look away. On the screen, the interior of the Cathedral of St. Jude was a sea of velvet, ermine, and diamonds. The camera swept over the faces of the congregation, world leaders, celebrities, the very people Harrison had once desperate to impress at the V&A Gala. They were all standing, heads bowed in reverence. And there she was. Genevieve walked down the aisle. She wasn't wearing the beige cardigans that Harrison had loathed. She was draped in a ceremonial robe of deep purple velvet, embroidered with the golden crest of her house. The plain, mouse-brown hair he had ignored was now woven with pearls, culminating in the heavy, ancient crown of Valdonia resting upon her head. She looked older. There were fine lines around her eyes, marks of the weight she carried. But she was breathtaking. She didn't look like a model. She looked like a monument. Indestructible, eternal. Harrison gripped the counter until his knuckles turned white. He remembered the nights he had left her alone to go network with Bianca. He remembered telling her she had no ambition. He had looked at a woman who was destined to rule a nation and told her she wasn't enough for a junior architect. The camera zoomed in as the Archbishop raised his hand. "Do you, Genevieve Marie-Thérèse, promise to defend the realm, to serve the people, and to uphold the peace?" "I do," she answered, her voice. It was the same soft, steady voice that used to ask him if he wanted the heating turned up. The same voice that had whispered, "I love you," when he came home late with lipstick on his collar. The camera panned to the side of the altar. Standing there, rigid and proud in a dress uniform covered in medals, was Prince Stefan. He watched Genevieve not with possession, but with awe. He was her sword and her shield. And then the knife twisted. Standing next to Stefan, holding the prince's hand, was a small boy. He was perhaps 4 years old, with unruly dark hair and serious slate-grey eyes. The air. Harrison stopped breathing. The timeline. It was close. Too close. But he knew, with a sinking, nauseating certainty, that the boy wasn't his. He had left Genevieve 5 years and 6 months ago. She had moved on. She had built a family. That boy could have been his son. If he had just been a decent man. If he had just bought the flowers. If he had just come home for the roast chicken. He could be standing on that balcony today, the father of a king. Instead, he was wiping crumbs off a laminate counter in Slough. "Hey, I've been waiting 5 minutes." Another customer, a woman in a hurried business suit, tapping her watch. "I need a latte, skim milk, and make it fast. I have a meeting with an architect in 20 minutes. Harrison looked at her. He looked at the TV, where Queen Genevieve was stepping out onto the balcony to the roar of thousands. Confetti rained down like gold dust. She was smiling, a true, radiant smile he hadn't seen in years. "An architect," Harrison repeated, his voice hollow. "Yes, now are you going to make the coffee or not?" Harrison looked at the espresso machine. He looked at his reflection, the ghost of a man who thought he was too good for a princess. "I'm making it," he whispered. He turned his back on the television. He couldn't watch the happiness he had thrown away. He realized now that Genevieve hadn't been the plain wallpaper in his life. She had been the load-bearing wall. And when he took a sledgehammer to her, he hadn't freed himself. He had simply brought the roof down on his own head. Harrison Caldwell pressed the button on the grinder. The noise drowned out the cheering from the television. He was the architect of his own ruin, and he had finally finished his masterpiece. A perfect, silent, empty life. Harrison Caldwell learned the hardest lesson of all. Not all treasure glitters, and not all silence is empty. He traded a diamond for a piece of glass, and in doing so, he shattered his own reflection forever. While Queen Genevieve ascended to a throne of gold, Harrison was left king of a kingdom of dust. It is a stark reminder that when you look down on someone, you might just be standing on the pedestal they built for you. Wow, that was a heavy ending. If this story gave you chills, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What do you think? Did Harrison deserve his fate, or was the punishment too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more stories about hidden secrets and instant karma, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a twist. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. 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 See you in the next one.
Creating man. Oh, what's it got? What do you mean, what's it got? Has it got, like, claws and fangs and shit? No, not really, no. Oh, has it got poison? No, no poison. Oh, has it got armor, like spikes and shit? No, no armor. How will it survive? It's got the best brain in the animal kingdom. It'll work stuff out. It'll create weaponry to take down beasts 100 times mightier than itself. It'll wear their carcass through the Ice Age. It'll go through famine. It'll go through world wars. It'll eventually start getting scared of words. For 10,000 generations, it'll be top dog. Oh. What are they? His testicles. Oh. What are they for? He keeps everything in there. His seed, his DNA. What's DNA? It's like a blueprint for life. It determines what you're like, what sex you are. How many sexes are there? 2. Also, that's where he keeps his testosterone, so he's fucking well hard, right? And if you take a finger and flick a testicle, he's fucked. He's absolutely fucked. He's throwing up, he's on the floor, he's out of the game, absolutely kippered. Why are you putting it on the outside? For a laugh, just for a laugh. You know, religious types, Americans. One bloke said to me, "Speak for yourself, dude, I ain't no ape." And I sent back, "Well, you are, because we're all apes." He went, "Nah, what's a gorilla ever done? We've walked on the moon." I sent back, "What do you mean we? You've done fuck all. You've spelt moon wrong." It's weird, isn't it, when people take credit for the sort of rest of the species, because that's what's pushed civilization forward, you know, a few geniuses along the way. Like, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Most of us do nothing. We eat shit and die. Like, if there was a meteor heading towards Earth to definitely destroy it, 4 billion people would get down on their knees and pray to their particular god, and a few hundred scientists would work out how to get Bruce Willis up there to stop it. It's an odd concept, praying, for me. I can't work out how God decides. All those people praying at once for different things. Is it like best idea wins? Or is it a democracy? Like he puts things at each issue, he goes, right, votes for and against, you know. If it's a democracy, we're in trouble. We're a tiny nation. Like, next time there's a flood warning in the West Country, if we're all going, oh, I hope everyone's okay. If the whole of China is going, yeah, fuck Bristol. There's a billion of them. More about China later. But yeah, I've always found praying quite strange. Like, if I bump into a friend or neighbour and I know they've got a little kid and I go, oh, how's so-and-so? And they go, oh, not good. He's in intensive care. We don't know if he's going to pull through, but I pray every night. What I do, as an experiment,